Peggy 18.
Mas brashtar, Winja.
Sushash, Karticha.
Tushena gwash, Saiwakanta.
Sanduayas, Winchapal.
Suwan brashtar. Snowy. Ninja instead.
What a lovely trailer. It's a shame we can't say the same about the game. Anyway, that's me getting ahead of myself. Hello and welcome everyone to yet another OPN AAA Anonymous, the show where we take a AAA game that is made all the rounds in media and all the rounds online, and we dissect it. We talk about what we like, what we don't like. And oh boy, there's a lot to like and a lot to not like. But before we get into the dissection, let's get around to everybody on the call tonight. I am your host, as usual, Steven, also known as Slave to Machine. And let's just go around the room, starting with you, Ben. We haven't seen you in a bit. How you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for OPN, and why you're here today.
I'm doing great. I'm one of the writers at OPN. I'm also one of the editors. Gonna have some more stuff going on soon, but that's still not done yet. So yeah. And as far as this game goes, I might be one of the few people here to have even something positive to say, but we'll get to that.
Well, it's not going to be a complete bash fest, but I think everybody's going to get their opinions said. That being said, next up on the list, we have Paris Forge. Paris, tell us a little bit about what you do for OPN and tell us your brief opinion on the game.
Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, Paris Forge here. I am the editor-in-chief for OPN's writing section and editing table. Let's see, Far Cry 3. I mean, not Far Cry 3. What am I I'm thinking...
It's okay.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about Blood Jacket.
Yeah, it might as well be Far Cry 3.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, but okay, so... Far Cry Primal. I am at like a 65% approval rating for Far Cry, in that basically if it was a game that stood by itself and I'd never had to reference any other Far Cry game, I'd be like, there are some fun parts, and then there are a lot more stale, repetitive, boring parts.
That's fair. I think that's a common complaint. Next on the list, Caitlin. Caitlin, you have been on so many of these. I think everybody that watches already knows you, but for those just joining us, who are you? Why are you here?
I'm Caitlin. I am associated with our E4I department, and I write and I do everything that Fred tells me to, except agree with him on everything.
On everything. Very nice.
That's true.
Next on the list, we have Eli. Eli, who the more he drinks, the smarter he becomes. Eli, thank you for joining us, getting off the bench this time, since we pull you on anyway when you're on the bench. But tell us why you're here and how much you've drunk And what are your thoughts, briefly, on the game?
Let's see why I'm here. Because Fred really likes to have me on these shows.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Shut up, Fred. But how much I've had to drink?
That's it? Wow. Fair
There was a
enough.
lot of gin in here. There was also a fair amount of hard cider mixed in with it.
All right.
And yeah, my opinion of the game, meh.
Really? That's
Yeah, it's pretty
that's
simple
how you sum it up. That's the whole review. Just meh.
Meh.
Did you play the game? Seems pretty.
I played it for a few hours. It's just meh.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And finally, last but not least, I'm not going to count Fred because his face
I was
is
about
down
to
there.
say, why is that a compliment?
No.
But you're not
you
talking
are
about me.
you are certainly least, sir, but you're also
I
last.
thought so.
We have a new face on one of these episodes today. We have Heather, who is joining us, the one with the stylish Pokeball headphones. So
They're
why?
Hello Kitty.
Oh, are they? They look like Pokeballs. They would have been better that way. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about how you joined OPN and why you're here.
Hi. Well, I actually, funny story. I'm trying to save up for my impending wedding. And so I went on Craigslist to find all these, gigs, and writing for, a video game site popped up, and I thought, what, that's going to be a lot of fun. It's okay that, it's not, it's just getting free games, but I'm like, hey, that's awesome. That'll save me money. So it's, in the end it works. So yeah, I've been writing, and it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm definitely new, but I really hope to be a part of this. So yeah.
So pretty much you saw that we were bribing people and you thought, all right.
Definitely was,
You're
yeah.
so bad.
That's acceptable. Well, now,
introduce me.
last and certainly least, the reason that we are all here,
With
the
big
Grand High
fade on the
Poobah, the fellow that will probably die on his vision quest this evening, Fred. Hi, Fred.
Hi.
He failed. He failed. He already failed.
I just did.
He
Did you
just
see
now
that?
died, as you said he
failed
would
the
die.
vision
Oh,
quest.
I saw the screen.
Right
Let's
as
think
you
that's
said it,
how many
he
times you'll
failed.
fail the vision quest.
It was big illumination too. I saw the screen light up and stuff, and so I have to do something and pursue the goal. I'm doing it right now. So, I failed again.
I didn't know you could fail.
I did not
thought
know
it was
either.
like an on rails thing that you could not fail. That's
What
pretty.
the
You didn't fail that, Ben?
Well,
That's the reason we bring Fred on these, because when he's playing,
Oh, he
you can
failed again.
guarantee that you will see so many deaths.
Yes,
That video that made the rounds of all the deaths of Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, the reboot, that was literally all Fred playing.
Anyways, I'm here to serve you tonight. I am at your service. We're trying this a little bit differently this time around, where I'm actually be in control of the game. I can show you what you want to see, where you want to go. So please, Steven, I failed again. I have no doubt you will, but use and abuse me.
I have a bad feeling that we're just going to see the same sequence repeatedly throughout this entire evening. So, let's get right into it, shall we? Far Cry Primal was recently released and to much fanfare, and then within 48 hours, the entirety of the internet
don't know what I'm
basically...
supposed to do here.
Fred,
The entire-
it's
Fred,
inverted. It's
wide
inverted.
control.
You got to go
Inverted
up.
axis.
Press down to go up.
Okay.
I want
all
to
you
just
gotta
keep
do is
watching
follow
this
the
the whole
bird.
time. I want to just keep watching this the whole time.
Oh my
but
God.
within 48 hours, the entirety of the internet that has been anticipating this game pretty much turned on it within just a few hours of it being released. The first question is, why? Ben, what happened? I mean, we were all geared up for Far Cry Primal. It's been marketed to death. And then I loved Far Cry 4. I loved Far Cry Blood Dragon. And then this. What happened?
Business happened, and it's one word, and it's Ubisoft. We all have learned so much about them, not good things over the past few years, but this game, it feels, even though we haven't heard the official word, it feels like this game was originally going to be another Blood Dragon, right? A spin-off of the previous game, like a DLC standalone thing, and we were, okay, cool, $15, cool concept. it's 10,000 BC. I've never played something like that. That sounds fun. And then the business got into it, and they said, "Oh man, how do we justify this as a $60 title? All right, let's put a bunch of filler content. Let's expand. Let's copy the old map. Let's just do whatever we can, the least expenditure to make a $60 game." And that's kind of why everyone got really pissed off. It didn't feel like a justified $60, and that's why people were just upset.
Well, what exactly justifies a $60 purchase nowadays, especially in this age of $10 indie games, $15 indie games? What exactly is Far Cry bringing to the table other than really shiny graphics? And that might sound a little cynical. It's not like I hate Far Cry, because I really don't hate Far Cry. I like Far Cry, but in my experience when I was playing the game, I felt, wow, this is and then I uninstalled it, and then I went straight back to Far Cry 4, and I'm like, my God, I enjoy this so much better. So what is the big disconnect between the previous episode, let's call it, the previous game, and now?
I think when it comes to all the community as like gamers, we kind of have gotten used to expecting innovation, especially within a series. When you release a new game, you at the very least you expect a new story, right? Whether it's the continuation of the previous one or just a whole new story, that's a bare minimum. So that's step one, where people are already kind of in this game. Their story, like the previous games, had pretty strong. I mean, whether or not it was like great narratives, at least they had a narrative. Here, it's like it throws you in and it just says, "Hey, collect some villagers. There's a bad guy who's trying to kill all your people." That's about it. There's no real character development. There's just no story. So that's step one. Step two is we expect innovation, both like mechanically, whether it's brand new or just developing on what previous games did, and they went the exact opposite direction, right? I mean, they took mechanics that were in previous games in the Far Cry series, and they just reduced them. They like made them worse, or just reduced the whole number of items or upgrades you have. Part of it's because of the setting. And then they borrowed stuff from other games and implemented it worse than those other games did. Like, we're
gonna get to that briefly in just a second, because that was the biggest story, is that apparently there were some assets being borrowed from within Ubisoft. So the big deal was that the map for Far Cry Primal, I don't think this is a spoiler to anybody, but the map for Far Cry Primal is a dead-on recreation or a dead-on representation. It's the same asset, basically, based upon the water feature in the center of the map. It is the exact map from Far Cry 4, which is kind of funny because, as far as I know, Primal is taking place in a totally different continent than Far Cry 4. So, was it just that things were rushed? Was it that they were lazy? What was it? Ben, quick, and then we'll get to someone else.
Yeah, I just really, what we had said before, I mean, I think it was the business that got into it. It sounded like they had a really cool idea for making a DLC standalone spin-off, like a 10-hour, like, Far Cry Blood Dragon, like something kind of stylized, a cool idea, quick play, $15, $20. Instead, it seems like they were like, how do we make this into a $60 title without investing like 5 years of development? They just took a bunch of assets. They took some mechanics from other games, like the hunting system in Witcher 3. They just took that and implemented it poorly into this. And, you get to like track blood scents and things like that,
Can I
so that's why,
here?
What's that?
Because you can't see me, but I kind of want to react to what Ben just said, because to me it's the opposite. It's like, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Essentially, like, we could have just made a DLC of Far Cry 4, paid $15, found like some tricks in the story that, I don't know, sent you back in time, and suddenly you're with the Cromanians. But when I first heard about what Far Cry Primal was intended to do conceptually, I thought, this is brilliant. This really
super cool.
It's a super cool concept, and I wish Ubisoft would have taken the task more seriously, because you look at the game and just the scene that I just went through and Fate some and more, like they have terrific artists on the team. Like they have people who are completely capable of immersing you. But instead of just releasing a game maybe 2 years, I think, after Far Cry 4 comes out, kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of take the Bethesda approach. Take 5, 6, 7 years to develop the game and make it what it deserves to be in the first place. And that's it. That's my spiel. I'd go back to failing.
Well, to be true, yeah, I was going to say, Fred, because I don't know if you can talk and fail at the same time. It's like walking and chewing gum. You're not doing so well either way. But that being said, it's really hard to pull away, and I got to disagree with Fred. I think this is exactly what they meant. This is basically a $60 mod for Far Cry 4, as far as I can tell. Caitlin, since you have an animal crawling all over you, that's a good segue. The biggest thing, and really the only thing that sets Far Cry Primal apart in many people's minds, is the fact that you can hunt animals, and that you can befriend animals, and that you can collect them. Kind of like Pokemon, which is where I kind of got sidetracked at the top of this. So, since you had so much fun tricking out and making your Marines pretty for our last episode of XCOM 2, what were your thoughts on the animal? Oh, and I have a dog right here. What were your thoughts about the game mechanics of at least the hunting?
I really hate to say this, but I thought it was amazing at first, and then I realized that it was just Tomb Raider with a bad bow reticle.
Ooh.
The gold, turning them gold when you press V.
Right.
You know, like, the one thing I did love, however, is that when you throw your weapons, when you shoot an arrow, it flies at normal speed. There is no, like, superhuman bow thing, and it definitely, like, you have to make all your weapons, and they definitely work as if they are made out of cattails, rocks, and twigs. So I felt the realism, and I was so excited at first because it felt like, you know, I'm following tracks, I'm doing this great stuff, you know, I'm looking for my people, I'm the last of my people, there's going to be this great city in this valley. And then I got to the valley and it was just an empty crater, and there was no great magic chief that I thought was kind of going to be there and, like, tell me how to live my life. Maybe Fred's got into that. I saw a spirit quest, but I just... yeah, it was difficult for me.
I don't know. I would figure that that's actually a positive. If you're feeling like the weapons actually feel like they should, I mean, it's really hard to tell what a bow strung with cattail probably feels like, but unless you have experience that we're not aware of.
Well, actually, I do have a bow, and it's a little 30-pound one. Okay. So he makes one for shooting goats, and I feel like it's very similar to the one I have that would probably be good at shooting goats. So, yeah, it actually does feel about right. And arrows, you know, it takes time from when they leave the bowstring, they actually arc properly, whereas when, I hate to compare it to Tomb Raider, but that's how it felt. When Lara shoots her bow, it's fast. It feels like an industrial bow. It's quick. It's powerful.
Like a AAA bow.
Yeah, but she made it out of the same thing that this guy made his bow out of. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a good aspect of realism to it. Although I don't know how I heal by ripping into an animal and eating meat. Although Leonardo DiCaprio managed it in The Revenant, so, like, he did the same thing as this guy.
Well, and again, in past Far Cry games, to throw back to 4, if you've played it, you know that as the main character, you can be involved in explosions, you can have stuff dropped on you, you can be shot up. All you have to do is pull out the bullet with a stick, and you're totally fine.
But you're so fragile in this one. So fragile.
Yeah. Well, I think
it's like that in all of them, though.
Yeah. I don't know.
But I think that might be just in the fact that in Far Cry 4, again, we have to keep throwing back to that. It was so unrealistic in the fact that you could get attacked by all these mercenaries, and that all you have to do is duck behind something and then, you know, pull out the glass from your hands or pull out the bullet and all that other stuff. So the fact that you are a little more fragile is probably a good thing. I would imagine that you wouldn't be able to do half of this. Eli, what did you think of the hunting mechanic? How far did you get in the game?
I've gotten a bit farther than where Fred is at right now.
Okay.
But I mean, the hunting is fine. It kind of feels like the game pushes you to keep hunting constantly, which, I mean, that's fine for a game, but in real life, nobody would be hunting that many animals all at once, even if it was 10,000 BC. You'd hunt an animal and then you'd spend a while eating it and skinning it, whatever you were going to do. So I don't know. I think the setting probably makes it really hard to strike a balance here between gameplay and realism.
Okay. Heather, I think you mentioned before we got into this that you haven't played Primal as of yet, but as somebody, before we get into like the super, super negative aspect, because I think we're going to get into it real soon, what are your initial thoughts? Have you played many Far Cry games in the past or games similar to this?
I mean, I haven't played Far Cry before, so this is like kind of my first real experience with it, so sorry. I have to say one thing I did think of, and this is like going in a totally different and really nerdy direction, is this was kind of the thing that I got into as a kid. Everyone's like busy with dinosaurs, and I was into this era, prehistoric humans. And my first reaction to this was, that is not how they hunted mammoths. They didn't go up to them and just like start throwing spears. They like would guide them off a cliff, and they'd all fall off the cliff with pointed spears below. So that was really my thing, was like, I was looking forward to like maybe a little bit more realism with the human element. But one thing I still was really excited about this, because one thing I do really like is that I like the illusion of limitations here with this, and that most video games, you feel a little bit more powerful. You're the main player. Whatever happens, you're going to survive this. And while you still felt that way with this game, there's still this element of I'm prey. There's plenty of things that can eat you. So that was what I was looking forward to, was, you're still hunting and killing, but you're still really weak. You're still like this proto-human. So that was kind of where I was excited.
Yeah. In previous Far Cry games, there was that moment where you kind of feel overpowered, like you can just smash everything to bits. How does this game compare to the previous games in the series? Is it something really new and we're just cynical, jaded gamers? Or is it really just a palette swap and a reskin? Ben?
So I'd say I'd preface it a little bit. I'm sort of along the lines of where Heather was coming from. I'm clearly not a real historian, but I'm a fan of history and studying history. So yeah, this game intrigued me because the time period is fascinating, and I've never been able to play a game really in this time period, at least like a AAA game. So I was hopeful that it would bring something new, but really, having played it, other than the setting, I don't know what is really new here. It just feels like the mechanics are either existing from other games, existing from previous Far Cry games, and the stuff that they implement is just not like it's always something where I can look at it and say, hey, I remember this mechanic from another game and it was better and more detailed than that game. You know what I mean?
Can you give us a for instance, as you mentioned from previous games? What are some of the similarities? Not counting the map, because that's been done to death already.
Well, we talked the map. I mentioned it before, but just briefly, they borrowed the whole hunting thing where you press the button and you go into your super cool vision mode, which like every AAA game does now. And then they borrowed the whole thing from The Witcher, which just came out with that like step-by-step hunting thing where you go to a spot and it gives you this little dialogue, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, and it makes you feel like you're hunting, and it was fantastic in The Witcher. And it just, I don't get, maybe I'm jaded because it's not the first time I've experienced it, but it just didn't feel anywhere near as good in this. I didn't feel like I was the Geralt hunting demons. I didn't feel like I was a proto-human hunting here. It felt like a mechanic that they implemented in the game. But I mean, other things. The pets. I was super interested in the pets. I love the games that give you pets. I'm a sucker for it. And they gave you these pets, and they pretty much do nothing except aim at a thing, press the button, press G is I think the standard button, and then it goes and chases it down and kills it. That's it. Like the owl, I mean, maybe when you get later, the owl can like get upgraded and drop bombs, which is like ridiculous. I mean, or not bombs, but like bees or poison gas, which is still ridiculous for the setting. But that's Far Cry. But man,
what every game needs a bee bomb. You gotta admit.
But it felt like the things that they implemented from other games, they didn't even learn the lessons from those games. Like, how are you going to implement pets and I can't do anything with it other than aim at the thing and tell it to go kill it? That's it. Like, really? Come on, guys. Come on.
Eli?
I just want to say the whole bee bomb thing makes me think of Invader Zim with the bees.
Exactly. You got to release the bees, man. Paris, what are your thoughts? Kind of building on what Ben is saying. How many Far Cry games have you played?
Actually, just the one.
Just the one?
Yeah.
How many similar? Go ahead, please. Sorry.
Which was Far Cry 3, I should mention, not the first Far Cry. Yeah, so.
Okay, that's fine. So the modern Far Cries is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what similarities are you seeing in Primal? Building off what Ben said, what are you seeing as a similarity from past Far Cry games or just other games in general?
Well, basically, the template of the main character is just exactly the same, like in Far Cry 3 and Far Cry Primal, where, the way you climb things, the way you fall, the way you get hurt, the way you heal yourself is all pretty much the same. It's just a palette swap of the main character and give him a new voice actor. So in that regard, it's still pretty much similar, except in Primal's case, there are no more weapon varieties for the character to utilize. Like, basically, you have a club, which you bash things in melee. You have a spear, you stab things in melee. And then you have different types of bows that shoot arrows that do a few points of different damage at different speeds. And so it kind of takes the variety out of the old Far Cry characters and just has this how do you explain the level of blandness in this character?
Well, I think that's a pretty fair statement. So, is this a character that you just really can't care about at all?
And not really, no, because he's basically just a tough guy leader. That's his personality. That's his. I lead this village because I'm the toughest. Because I'm the one guy that the cat will listen to every morning.
Well, that's kind of how it. That's kind of how it works.
Welcome to 10,000 BC.
Yeah, I mean, it's whoever managed to live through a winter and whoever managed to beat the crap out of the next toughest guy. They were the ones running the show. So
a big part of that.
It's not just the main character too. The rest of the tribal characters in the village, besides their quirks, with one being the drugged out shaman hippie, the other being just hunter woman, strong hunter woman, and all that, their interactions all boil down to the same thing. You go into their huts, and then they have this moment where they're just like, they go really up close so you can see up their eyes right up in your face, and then they just have you read their subtitles, and then you go off and do a super like intensified version of one of the quests you've already been doing. Like, oh, here you hunt an animal, except this animal has like 1 million health points compared to the usual animals that you just stab like 12 times. Or you escort, but this time you're escorting someone that actually can't die instead of one of those villagers that you die and you just don't get the villagers. So, it's all of the characters just feel like hyped up NPCs, basically.
Okay, and so that's another question, the quests. Now, we've already, and we'll get back into the things that we don't like about the game, but were there any good quests? And I hate to phrase it that way, but me personally, I just got this overwhelming feeling of meh when I was playing the game, and I played for about 4.5, 5 hours. So, meh.
I think
Caitlin,
you're being nice by saying me.
I really am.
I'm so bored right now.
Well,
Okay.
it's 'cause you keep dying.
No, I mean I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm so bored playing.
Wait a
this game.
second.
It's
Fred,
like I would
Save your
rather
damn
be-
wolf, man.
I would
Why are
rather.
you running away?
You can just
Okay.
respawn it after it dies.
Damn it,
Oh,
Caitlin.
did I let it
Yes,
die?
you let it
So-
die, you heartless
Oh, the
bastard.
So for the first time, Fred has actually gotten farther than I have. And for me, it's actually because of the quest system. They're lame. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. There's a reticle sometimes, but I actually quit because I got to the quest after you save the girl that you have to go gather people for your stuff. And there was this little group of green people. Like when I say green, I mean friendlies. And this girl is just dancing and chanting, and like I feel like I'm a ghost or something because no matter what I do, I cannot get them to talk to me. So I accidentally shot her with a bow, and then I had to kill the other two. And so I failed at making a village because I killed the only living people that didn't want to eat me that I found.
I wish I could have been part of that conversation, because that's a throwback to a previous episode we had where I talked about one of my favorite glitches from Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, where I just assassinated a guard and the other guard's just talking to him like there's no big thing. Guy's dying with an arrow in his neck, and he's just like, yeah, so my promotion's going to come through any day now, I promise. So Caitlin,
Was that
is
a glitch? How are you supposed to get those people to talk to you? You just walk up to them?
That was definitely a glitch, Caitlin, and it's good to know that you're a genocidal maniac and that you kill your own villagers.
Thanks. Autosave prevented me from going back, so I can't finish that one. I haven't played since.
But she's only a genocidal maniac when they won't talk to her.
I tried everything. I danced. I jumped up and down with them. I told her she was great at singing. I tried everything.
So you just jumped up and down. You're like, you're not going to talk to me. Boring. And just shot her.
I actually accidentally shot her in the back too, and she was the dancing one.
Wait, you shot her twice?
I was looking at her, and I was trying to click every button I could to get her to talk to me, and then I ended up drawing my bow and shooting her in the back of the spine, in the spine.
So you basically killing joked her, is what you're telling me.
It was so bad, and I felt so guilty, but there was nothing I could do.
You could have said hi.
I did. I did say hi. They completely ignored me like I didn't exist.
Okay, so Fred, I think we're gonna have to discuss having her go in for a psych eval. Just throwing that out there.
And we can definitely do that post call. But Stephen, if you'll allow me, can I make a comment and ask?
Yes.
Also ask you a question. The comment is, how bad looking is this game for a AAA game? I mean, some of these graphics, like the pixelization, look at those rocks. Obviously there's a delay, but those rocks...
Fred, find us a rock. Go.
I'm right in front of it. And
no, you're in front of a stick.
I'm playing a game right now, which is an indie game called The Solace Project, and I have an interview with the devs on Tuesday. And this is they probably made this game with a $20,000 budget, and it looks better than Far Cry Primal from Ubisoft. I think that already is very problematic. The second thing I wanted to ask is I wanted to ask you, Stephen, because I know you play Assassin's Creed, and I believe you played. Sorry to throw you under the bus. You are an AC fan, and I don't know if you're a fan, but you certainly appreciate the game. And the game comes out. I believe they get one out every year, if not one out every 18 months.
Yeah.
So do you feel like when you play Assassin's Creed and when you play the next titles, does it feel just like basically a repetition of the last one in a new setting, or do you see a lot more progress in the AC series that you're seeing right now in the Far Cry series?
Well, to be totally honest with you, I'm going to preface this by saying recently a representative from Ubisoft, I think it was actually the CEO, I can't remember, but they actually did come out and say, yeah, that yearly thing that we said we were going to do, we found out that you guys really don't like it, so we're going to stop that. So that should at least push them back to at least every 19 months or so. But that being said, and this is going to sound really harsh, yes, Assassin's Creed is one of those games where it is repetition because the mechanics are almost always the same. But the problem is, and this is my own little tangent, I'm going to be brief about it, gamers are really fickle. I mean, there's a reason Assassin's Creed was popular. It's because the gameplay and the story was fun. Now, I know you don't believe that a game needs to have a story to be fun, but I do. And the truth of the matter is, there's actually much more progression in Ass Creed than there is in Far Cry, because with Far Cry, it's literally, these guys are bad, you are good. Go kill the bad guys. And while you're at it, go help the good guys. In Assassin's Creed, you're actually getting a pretty decent story, even though most people will rip it to shreds.
But
the problem I have
to argue with you on this point, and I think it's important that I do. Far Cry 1 had a pretty lame story, nothing extraordinary, and at the same time, I don't think you can't deny great game.
It was a great game, but the thing is, it was a great game because it was the first time we saw a game that gorgeous. Far Cry for the longest
time. Open world. It introduced open world.
It was more than graphics. It was more than graphics.
Oh, but no, I'm not saying just graphics. I'm saying even gameplay, mechanics, the interaction with the world. It was something that we never really saw. Far Cry was a benchmark for the longest time, and then 2 came out, and it was about the same. But this is my problem with some gamers today, is we want something new and original, exciting.
But the thing is,
but we want more of the same thing, so we never know what we actually want.
But it was something.
Every game is different. Yeah.
It's also something I was telling Caitlin on TeamSpeak earlier on, is that when I remember playing Far Cry 1 and feeling very much driven through the game, but driven in a good way. Driven like I am getting from the beginning to the end, and it's not so much that it's story driven, but it's purpose driven. Like you feel like you have this purpose. It gets harder. In many ways, it was way more two-dimensional than this open world kind of like venture and explore, and yet it was a lot more fun. It was a lot more fun. And so why do you think they changed the recipe to make it really a game about being a completionist first and foremost, if not only being a completionist?
How much of a cynic do you want me to be?
As Steven-like as you can.
Oh boy. Okay. So here's the thing. Far Cry is a brand that prints money. It prints money. It's like Pokemon. It's like Hello Kitty. It's a brand that prints money no matter what you slap it on. It could be Far Cry Arizona, and it will probably sell because Far Cry branding is a big deal. It could be Far Cry Schenectady. Doesn't matter. Gonna sell. Call of Duty. How many Calls of Duty have we had? They can afford to try something new and different. But the problem is, they know that their fan base, oh God, Far Cry Nebraska? That would be the most boring thing on the planet.
Farming simulator. Far Cry farming simulator.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I want Far Cry Kansas now, to be honest with you. Or Yukon Territory, something like that. But it's not. Nothing. Nothing.
So all it does is give you a spawn point, a fast travel thing. That's all the bonfire does.
So, but at the same time, getting back into that, no. The fact of the matter is, I do like the fact that Far Cry is taking its mechanics, the fast travel, the spawn points, the villages, and they're giving it that 10,000 BC spin on it. But at the same time, this is one of the complaints I have, is that it is legitimately a mod that got released for full price. This thing should not have been any more than $20, and it should have been attached to Far Cry 4 as a mod. Caitlin, my opinion.
I think it's funny because we were talking in the chat earlier about the Mammoth Quest being the opening quest and how it led me to believe that I would be much more guided. And I do feel that Far Cry Primal is original. It's something different. It's something I didn't even know I wanted. I didn't know I wanted to be a Cro-Magnon. And now I want somebody else to do it because I didn't get what I wanted out of being a mass murdering Cro-Magnon, you know? I feel like they should not have killed off that first group of characters. I wanted to get to know them. Like, you need to have your base. You need to have your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. and I totally wanted to fight that saber-toothed tiger and save everyone. That would have been a great reason to be chief.
Now that tiger will screw your shit up. You don't want to mess with that tiger.
I wanted to stab it. I was so ready to.
You're playing. Go for it. Hey, Fred, shoot that guy.
Remember, this is gaming press. Remember that in gaming press, a 70 is like death to a game.
But look at that water, Fred. I mean, I'm a sucker for water graphics. I admit that. But the water's nice, but the rest of it...
Hey, Fred, nobody in the stream can hear you. You got to turn your mic on the stream.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying the game does not deserve more than a 40, and most of the press gave it an 85. It's disgraceful. I think this is a big problem in the industry, and I don't want to draw the conversation away from the game itself. But I feel like Ubisoft pulling something like this that costs so many gamers $60 worth of their hard-earned chunk of change. And then give it an 80, basically encouraging gamers to buy this. It's outrageous.
You know, I actually think it might be a slight distraction, but I think that's only because we're falling asleep at watching Far Cry Primal. Can you tell I'm not a fan? But it is one of those things where at this point, pretty much all AAA games, they exist for a Metacritic metric. And I'm going to knock on that. At this point, they're pretty much only focused on hitting 85 or 90s on Metacritic, and damn the consequences of it being a repetitious piece of dreck. The problem is that repetitious piece of dreck is what people buy based on the name. And so they can actually get away with just recycling assets, and we'll complain about it, but we'll forget about it in about a week's time. Or at least maybe I'm too cynical about that, but Warner Brothers, I'm looking at you and what you've done to PC games lately. Paris.
I think some of the big problems with Far Cry Primal is that it always teases the potential to be like really good. Mm-hmm. For example, the opening mission, like Caitlin said, you're working with a team of hunters and you're doing all this somewhat strategic way of, let's take down this one baby mammoth so that we can have food. And then suddenly we're ambushed by tigers. That was teasing something awesome, but it never gets repeated. You never have moments like that throughout the game. No matter how far you've gone. I've played this for 15 hours. I have never gotten anywhere close to a mission like the first one. Other things of the potentials is the pets, the animals that you tame. I actually tamed the tiger that killed off my crew in the beginning of the thing. That's the thing you could do, which was somewhat nice, except for the fact that I had to set it on fire 5 times to get it weak enough. Is that for example, I've noticed as I'm playing through that sometimes if you have a saber-toothed pet, they'll pick up a corpse and then drag it over to you and then drop it at your feet like it's a gigantic kitty showing off its mouth, and then start eating the...
I'm sorry, what was that?
Huh?
Fat kitty.
I don't think so, but go on.
Like a gigantic kitty, yeah, that's what I said. And it'll start eating the corpse and then start replenishing its health from automatically eating the corpse. And that's actually, that's fine. That's good. That's mechanically relevant. That's something you would expect. That's fitting from the game. And the owl, the giant man-shaped owl that you can train to kill off. And actually, the owl is probably the most effective animal in the entire game because you could just kill enemies with one bird swoop somehow. And drop B-bombs, which is very important.
I have to call in Caitlin because I feel like she's going to shoot us all. Go.
All right, go, Caitlin.
I have a question. I have a question. Why don't the pets work like actual hunting pets? The Far Cry Primal introduced a mechanic that I really loved, where if you shoot an animal, it will actually bleed out as it runs and leaves the trail, and you'll find it dead. Why can't the animals help you do that like hunting animals are supposed to? Can't they retrieve?
Well, like I said, it has all this. The game has all this potential of good things. It teases it, but it doesn't follow through. It's like someone started working on this idea, and then it dropped it, and they worked on some other idea and made that somewhat cool, but then dropped it right before
Sounds
they
like
could get to
Noobs.
anything.
Hey now.
Yeah.
We actually get to a finished product. I can't call this one finished. Speaking of that, I saw a little earlier, Heather was nodding along as I was saying about gamers and scores and whatnot. So just to bring you on back into the conversation, because I know you haven't played Far Cry or much of them. What, in your opinion, from watching this, from listening to what we've been saying, and just what are your thoughts on this? Just from the gameplay footage, just from what we've seen in the industry as a whole, where games are just constantly recycled. Do you think that might be something of what's happened here?
Well, I mean, just going by what you guys have said, where, you've played other Far Cries and you're saying it's recycled maps. From someone who hasn't played any, that wouldn't be an issue for me. I would be like, oh, yay, look at this thing. It's very cool. So I guess I would enjoy this game way more than you guys would. But that is really common. I know Skyrim, for example, really did set a bar with this where, back in 2011, we were like, holy shit, the new standard is we want to put 200, 300 hours into a game and that be typical. So I think that really messed with our minds. And so for that to, not be seen here where it's like, okay, we're recycling a map. We're not getting that number of hours in. I think I can see why that would be so disappointing.
To react to that, I would actually argue that even if you had never played this game, you would not really enjoy it, because Far Cry 4 still put the pretense of a storyline, still made you feel like you were walking through a game and not just an open world. So I don't know. I actually would argue that even if you've never played a Far Cry game, this is not a whole universe to discover. It's kind of just this endless world that's poorly designed and graphically disappointing.
Well, that being said, it's one of those things where how much can you honestly do in a sandbox game? There have to be limitations, and don't make any mistake on this. Far Cry Primal is a sandbox game. There is direction, but basically the whole map is open to you, much like other Far Cry games, much like Skyrim, much like Oblivion. But the question is, would this... I'll get into that in a second, but just to keep Heather in the loop here, is there such a thing as too many sandbox games? Is it really that bad to have a linear point A to point B type of game? Are we overloading on sandbox games? What's your take?
I actually, this is an argument I actually really like, because I think I want to use an older game, two older games here. It's the Final Fantasy VII versus the Final Fantasy X argument. When people coming in playing from Final Fantasy VII, you had an open world map. You could go and do whatever you wanted. It was almost like this proto, introduction to sandbox games. People playing Final Fantasy X, if you picked it up after you played Final Fantasy VII, you didn't like it very much because all of a sudden it was extremely linear. But with Final Fantasy X, that was actually the first one I played, sorry. I liked it because you had this path that you were supposed to follow. And suddenly when you're deviating from this path, it stresses you out as a player. You were like, oh no, I'm supposed to be doing this thing. We're no longer doing this thing, guys. What's going on? Why can't we do the thing? Let's get back on track here. And then you learn oh wait, no, that's bad. We don't want to do the thing anymore, So I actually really enjoyed it from that standpoint, So yeah, sometimes sandbox games can be good, but if you're just saying, okay, here's this open world that you get to do a lot of shit in, it's that can really detract if you don't have the storyline. So it just really depends on what you're going for, I guess. If you have a lot of other things you can offer, where Skyrim, you were I just want to do alchemy or do, catch butterflies. I don't even know. Everyone did their own thing. There was something there that at least it was enjoyable. So it just, if you don't have that other thing to offer, you're screwed either way. You just lost either way.
have there been any games that you've played personally that strike that happy balance between linear and that sandbox?
I liked Infamous. I mean, it's less sandbox and more story, but it was entertaining enough. It didn't have the replay value that I guess Skyrim and Final Fantasy X both do, but it did kind of tickle, sandbox while at the same time giving me enough of a storyline to keep me interested. So.
Okay, so let's throw that's an open question to anybody right now, is there a happy balance that can be had between sandbox and linear? And on top of that, is this just a case of we've played so many other games that everything just feels like it's been done to death? Ben? Start with you.
I would say, does this feel like it's been done to death? It's been an open topic, I feel like, the last year or two, that we're all, as the collective gaming community, are getting tired of open world games. I would say that no, we will never get tired of quality games. As tired as we all were with open world games, then Witcher 3 comes out and oh my god, it's amazing. Nobody cares that it's open world, it's amazing. When you play an open world game like Witcher, like, Skyrim, like whatever you wanted, whatever you thought was good, you want to explore, you want to feel like there's some sort of narrative pulling you in, even if that narrative isn't like a grand narrative, like, oh, I'm just going into this little village, they're having like a problem with some demon, or maybe you go into a cave and there's some guy who's been captured by trolls, and like you go through like a little 30-minute quest. Like, that's cool. You feel like you're exploring and going through a story. Open world gaming has become this business where they make a map and they just say, hey, let's fill it with a bunch of stuff. Like, look at Far Cry. Let's put a bunch of capture points. Let's put a bunch of different animals you can kill, collectible items, skins that you can collect. Where's the narrative? Where's the story that drives me in? Like, Paris was saying how the character is just lifeless, right? There's nothing, I think it was Paris or it was Eli, but the character's lifeless. The character is lifeless because there's no story. There's no character development. There's nothing to make me care about not only the other people in the world, but myself, or the character you play. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing, even when you explore, all you do is find a new animal, find a new capture point. Where's that, like, oh, I'm exploring into this, 10,000 BC land and finding, like, some guy who's inventing some new technology and, like, is about to revolutionize our village. Like, where's the cool stuff? Where's the story,
Paris?
Yeah, all excellent points, Ben. And just to go off of that as well, that the core of a lot of open world games, to have that happy balance that Steven is trying to find, is that an open world game should be like multiple smaller scale games all squished into one, where like if you're on if you're on the main path of your main storyline, but you use the open world aspect to deviate, and so you should fall off of that main storyline and fall on another line, land on another line, and be able to follow that to its endpoint, and to be able to change narrative to like experience these different things. A Skyrim, if you deviate from the main quest, which most people do, you'll probably find yourself in the middle of another pretty long storyline, the Thieves Guild, the Mages Guild, where they have results, where you meet characters that have like a narrative, a storyline going for them. So you move through the different sections, like the different sections of the open world actually have a purpose, have their own thing going on that is outside of the main storyline, or just mildly intertwined with it. In Far Cry, this is the problem in Far Cry. If you take your character and throw them at any random spot on the map, you'll end up with a place that just has a different animal that has the same quests. Same basic quests of, oh, protect the villagers, oh, attack these enemies. The same things, the animals, if they're different animals, that just means you have to poke them more times or they do more damage when they hit you. Nothing is like differentiating that part of the open world from any other part. It's just landmass A, landmass B, and landmass AB.
It's minimum effort game development, like absolute minimum effort.
Exactly.
Caitlin? Eli, you can put your hand down. I'll get to you right next.
I've played a lot of open world games. In fact, I will not play an MMO usually unless it is open world because I don't like instance-based crap. Now, I think the best I have ever played was Elder Scrolls Morrowind. And I can make this comparison in particular. I know there are other Elder Scrolls games, but Morrowind is a little bit special in that you have about as much starting about you as the main character in Far Cry Primal. You're an immigrant to a new land, and you have to make your new life in this new country where you are not, a native citizen and everyone knows it. And what they did was they just gave you a lot of people to meet, stuff to do, and ways to develop yourself beyond just you. Like, you could join a guild. I was trafficking drugs. You could just explore stuff and explore it harder and harder.
Murder, drug trafficking. What else are you doing on your free time?
In Far Cry Primal, there's this, you're supposed to build a civilization, right? You're supposed to build this city, but base building is no fun when you have no reason to get attached to people. If you know what I mean, there's not anything in place. Like, I was excited because I thought I was going to discover a big, Wenja city. There's not. And that's what it is. There's nothing to do, and there's no way to define yourself other than the guy whose chief was killed. That's who you are.
Yep, that's pretty much your entire identity at that point. Eli? Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, I just wanted to say, in response to you talking about the happy medium in between an open world game and a linear game, realistically, I think you could take most any game and make it open world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the happy medium in it, like, realistically, I think it's just the way that you should be going about making an open world game for the most part. Have your main storyline and tell me where to go for that. Throw in like other stuff for the person to do that's relevant to the world that you're in, but just tell me where to go. Just have a thing saying where I need to go to get to the next part of the main story, and then have whatever side quest shit you want to have in there. Just be another thing that's along the way that I can do if I want to do, and if I don't, then I just keep going.
So, if I may jump in. Oh, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I actually wanted to respond to both Ben and Eli on this, and I almost hate myself for saying that, because I've criticized Fallout quite a bit over the past couple weeks, Fallout 4, but, I was playing this game and I thought to myself, after Tomb Raider, this is hard to swallow. After Rise of the Tomb Raider and what they did in 2016, which feels like a game from 2016, wow, like Square Enix really surprising us right now and doing wonders. But then I thought to myself, yeah, but it's just not the same type of game. Can I really be fair? Is it fair to compare it to Tomb Raider? And as I was listening to Eli and Ben commenting on what makes a good open world game, I couldn't help but feel, yeah, well, what they're describing was my experience with Fallout 4. There's a sense of direction, there's a story, they get you involved. From the get-go, you really are drawn into the game in a way that is, I would sum up to being good game development. And so, basically, this is just a comment kind of in agreement with you, saying that's everything you're describing is kind of what I found in Fallout 4. And what
wasn't Fallout 4 your first Fallout game, though?
It was.
And not to mention, that is probably the Fallout with the weakest storyline.
Easily.
Because I really, as soon as I got into the first settlement, I'm like, Sean? Who the hell's Sean? Oh shit, I've got stuff to do over here. I don't know. I actually think it's kind of a major insult to Fallout to say that Far Cry Primal and Fallout are on the same level.
That's the point. I'm not saying that at all. I'm actually saying that Fallout 4 made me Far Cry Primal made me realize that Fallout 4 wasn't so bad.
Yeah, but that's the thing of it, is both of them are bad. In my opinion,
I wouldn't say Fallout 4 is bad. I would say Fallout 4 was.
I would agree with Steven. Yeah.
Okay, man. I won't fight that argument.
You really should. No, it's one of those things where in the past, and this is actually a really good point that I want to see what everybody's opinion is on this, of the people that have played these games. Far Cry is not a new series. It's been out for several years now. It's been out for nearly a decade. If someone can fact check me on the age of that, over a decade. And, Fallout's been out for a long time. Yeah. No, 2002? The first
Far Cry was 2004.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Just over a decade, 12 years or so, if we want to be, pedantic.
God,
but in Fallout, Fallout's been,
I feel like it should have been longer.
No. But and that's the thing is, Fallout's been around for a lot longer, and every single game has progressively gotten more and more shallow. Not to say that Far Cry was ever deep to begin with. It's pretty much a shoot everything and ask questions never type of thing. But as the games progress, we're finding that games are getting more and more rote, more and more shallow, more and more repetitive. Is this how things are going to go going forward? I mean, are we going to look forward to, say, The Witcher 7 basically being like a Pokemon game? Instead of hunting, you're just catching? Eli.
So, in regards to you saying that the games keep getting progressively worse over time, I guess, just to simplify it. When you're talking about Fallout New Vegas did not get worse. They were given a much shorter production window because Bethesda forced them to do it in something like 10 months. But aside from some of the graphics not being as good, and there being a little more buggy performance than one might expect. Aside from that, New Vegas was really good.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, I should point out, just like what was said in the chat, I can throw Fallout under the bus, but we have to keep in mind that Fallout did change hands. It changed from Interplay to Bethesda, and now Bethesda still has it, but Obsidian, who we're actually going to talk to in the near future, by the way. Obsidian, who is well known for making kind of buggy games, but awesome stories, but really buggy games. They're the ones that did New Vegas. So it's one of those things where we've got at least a couple of different companies with their fingers in the pie, so to speak.
And Obsidian, but...
As long as they're not making the game, yeah. Writing the game is fine. Eli.
Obsidian in particular, they actually had some of the people that worked on the original Fallout, which Bethesda doesn't have.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things. But that's the question I have is it one of those things, are we at fault? Are gamers at fault for these shallow, repetitious games? Or is it just... we want to get the money, we want to get the money, we want to get the money. But again, doesn't that go back to the gamers being at fault?
Oh.
Good. Indie devs and AAA are two different things, though. That's the bit. No? Fred, you're apparently the chat can't hear you. So if you're going to say something profound,
I was so being so profound too. I'm so sorry. It's a little.
I love this. So when Fred's speaking, are we just like staring blankly ahead and no one's hearing anything?
I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, essentially, I was saying I disagree with Steven pretty profoundly. I think the gaming industry as a whole is plagued by a few big studios that like Ubisoft that really are unimaginative and making worse titles every year because they're just relying on what sells. But at the end of the day, we have a really creative industry that keeps surprising us every year and building better products in larger numbers. So no, I'm optimistic, Steven. I think you're wrong to be pessimistic.
That's a diplomatic and incredibly suck-up style answer. I have to give you kudos for that. But at the same time, you are the same person that has on multiple shows said that you don't care for an actual deep game or a story involved in the game. So, and again, I do have to say, AAA and indie are two
right now, and
different
I'm focused in game.
AAA and indie games are kind of night and day. We don't get a lot of deep AAA games. Meanwhile, we've got indie games that are covering things like depression, AI. We've got indie games that are covering, plenty of mental disorders. I mean, we could go down the entire DSM-5 and probably find at least one game per.
I let other people speak, but I would argue that EA Origin is still doing a great job.
Okay, EA.
I think you're the only one here.
Yeah. No, I know.
Ben,
I'm the minority.
What are your thoughts on the minority vote there?
I would say, all right, I'm going to build on exactly what he said by comparing it to the movie industry, because games have rapidly advanced, and now they really are emulating the movie industry in that the big ticket stuff, they're not making it to make something that is, brilliant. They're not making it to we want to make the new best game ever. It's a business. There's business people investing millions of dollars so that they can make more millions back. Just like with Hollywood, they're not in it to make the greatest movie. They're in it to make the most money. And part of making the most money is appealing to the most people, which generally doesn't lead to the greatest stuff. Which is why you end up with, once in a blue moon, you get, a great Hollywood movie. But most of the really good stuff comes from indie movie filmmakers or foreign markets. And in game development, I agree with Fred. I don't agree that games are getting worse. I agree with Fred. I think games are getting better and better. Some of the, if I list, a top 10, top 20, how many of them came out in, the past 3 years? Probably a decent amount. There's a lot of great stuff that comes out. It's just not from the big. If the game has, a 20, 30, 40, $50 million budget, it's probably going to be super formulaic, super safe.
Can you say that after you've I was about to say, can you say that
CD
after
Projekt Red is our golden, that's our golden god, right? And no one else is like them. Everybody else is different. They're in it purely for the money. But yeah, I mean, you'll see. I mean, it's just like the movie industry. Innovation comes from low investment, right? Indie development games, when an investor sees a great idea and they say, hey, all right, that's only going to cost me $250,000 or $1 million to invest, and maybe this becomes a huge thing, and we make a ton of money. But if you're EA, you cannot risk $60, $100 million, or if you're, Rockstar, you can't invest $250 million or whatever stupid amount of money they spent on GTA 5. Even though GTA 5 was a great game, you can't invest that money on something that's new and risk-taking. You just can't. Your business will collapse on the first time you fail. You can't do that. So you get the indie games, and go ahead.
Can I be fair about this? It's funny that you bring up GTA. It's funny that you bring up GTA because I felt like GTA 5 was really underwhelming compared to some of the previous games in the series. It seems like we stopped talking about GTA 5 very quickly. Is that just because the game wasn't all that great once it got released and it got past the hype? Or is it just that we have so many fantastic games that get released around the same time? And to throw back to Fred, yes, CD Projekt Red can do no wrong. It is one of those rare indie developers that become a AAA, and yet they're still doing it for the legit reasons. There are some cash-ins, like that weird Witcher board game thing, but we don't talk about that. So is it just a situation where now we've got so many great AAA games coming out that it's almost like ADHD with these releases, where they're coming out? Yeah. Is it something like that at this point?
I don't know. That's I would say that when it comes to AAA games, I don't think that there's a lot of great ones coming out. I would say that they're all I'm more like you though, rather than the way Fred views it. I need a great story. I will put up with it. If Far Cry Primal had a great story and everything else was the same, I'd probably think it was good. I will put up with a bad game if it has a good story. I need that story. That's why I, watch movies, why I play games. I like the stories. It's escapism.
If they made Far Cry Primal more like Primal Rage, I'd be all over this. I'm just saying.
So, I don't know. That's the thing. Like, why... Hearing you say that about GTA 5, I don't know. I mean, my chair is slipping. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, compared to GTA 3, which I still play to this day, and even Vice City, which I still play constantly to this day, just GTA 5, installed it, played through the story, meh.
Oh, yeah, I played through the story, and I haven't booted it up since. Probably because I'm just tired of the gameplay, but I actually love the game because the story was super good. I think that their company, whoever they've employed as the writers, are consistently great. Their GTA series has been pretty good writing throughout the whole history of the series, and that's why we keep coming back. That's why certain other games are so crap. Like when their writing is terrible, their stories are terrible, and you just don't care. Whereas GTA, it was like, well, even if it's not, like the greatest thing you've ever seen, it's engaging, and there's this real story, there's characters, and they change and they develop, it draws you in.
Fair enough. Heather, what are your thoughts on all of this? Are AAA games just getting more and more shallow? Or what exactly is the issue? Am I out of line saying that gamers are at fault if we get a shallow, hackneyed, repeat of a game?
I mean, as a consumer, it's not necessarily a bad thing to, have your input and say, this is what I want, because, I actually work in the marketing department from Bandai, and so we actually do have to listen to a lot of consumer input. And if someone says like, hey, these toys suck, like we have to listen to that. And I think, with every, few years, there's a change up in games. And so I'm sure something else is on the horizon soon. But I wanted to say one thing about that. I did see a little webcomic strip where, gaming throughout the years and how people reacted to them. Mario 64 graphics, the reaction was like, where does reality end and gaming begin? Like, we were like so excited. Final Fantasy X came out, and even I was impressed. I was like, holy crap, this is the future. And then Skyrim comes out and everyone's like, look at all these glitches, this is crap. Like we just, I think we got spoiled. Like, and, with PS4 graphics, I was like, there's really not that much of a difference between PS3 and PS4. PS1 and PS2, I was like, holy crap, like, that's so crazy. So I think we really are becoming a little jaded. The market is so flooded and we really are spoiled for choice. So I think what'll end up happening is you'll see the bigger companies looking to the indie games and going, okay, what are they doing? How are they capturing some of our market? And they're going to incorporate, some of the things that they're doing into their games. I think that's really where the future is going to go.
Caitlin, same question. Your thoughts? Yes, I'm putting you on the spot.
Repeat the question, please, because I was in chat.
Is it our fault if we get a game that is essentially a carbon copy of a previous game? Is it just down to the fact that we want more of the same, but we want something slightly new? And do you think developers and publishers this sounds weird, but do you think they feel pressured to just give more of the same stuff that sold before purely for the sake of sales?
I think that they feel pressured by the particularly more stupid people in our society, but the fact that indie games and creative indie games at that sell very well, I think proves that wrong. We do want new things. We do want innovation, but honestly, we don't have that much option. We don't have that much to choose from in AAA titles. You got the one thing that does this, the one thing that does that, the one thing where you're in a weird dystopian city and shooting big daddies. I don't know. You got just like the big name titles, and that's all we're gonna have, I think. And then when something new comes along that really is new, we're gonna love it.
And then everything will copy it.
Yeah.
Could I please butt in on this?
No. Why?
No, you're not setting things on fire. You're ignoring us.
Wait, first, can we hear you in the chat? That's the first question.
Yes. It's not like
I'm doing.
It's not like I'm doing anything important or relevant.
You're not. You're just running around.
So I'm pausing it right now, and I want to reply to Ben's comment about not being able to be adventurous when you're a big studio, and just because that approach would really take you down as a business. And I want to tell you, Ben, how much I profoundly, even ideologically, fundamentally disagree with you on all levels. I think the greatest studios in American cinema are studios that have defied the very mentality that you're kind of embracing as a reality that plagues big budgets. Steven Spielberg, I pull Steven Spielberg out of the loop, has always been able to fit the mold and yet really capture the industry in doing something that always brought us. And I don't want to make this a conversation about cinema, but I feel like the greatest cineast of Hollywood, from a guy as conventional as Steven Spielberg to a guy as a little bit more adventurous as Stanley Kubrick, would have disagreed with you pretty profoundly, Ben. Like that.
You are talking about films that are 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago.
Doesn't matter. I mean, still today, the great movies are the movies that kind of surprise us, and sometimes that's in a Hollywood fashion. Surprise doesn't have to be indie. Pegging like the innovation to the back of the indie scene, I think is very much vulgarizing what art and entertainment is. I'm
not pegging them that that's exactly where it should be. I'm just saying that is the reality. I would love for that's why The Witcher 3 was so amazing, because it felt like a big studio actually took some risks on a great thing. But I would say, not to make a whole film comment, but Steven Spielberg made Jaws. 40 years of Hollywood filmmaking is copying Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
I just want to throw out to the chat right now, it is probably the best Pokemon war I have ever seen, and I'm going to blame Caitlin on this one. Heather, what are your thoughts before Fred jumps in and tries to filibuster us again? Can I hear you?
I'm sorry. I was trying to find my unmute button. No, okay. I was going to say, actually, if you look at all the big box office movies now, yes, I am going to keep this back on cinema, is you're going to see more sequels, more franchises. You're seeing superhero movies being done to death. There's 3 this year, but I think there's like 7 next year. I mean,
there's 7 due until 2020.
Something like that. It's overdone. You're seeing more because of the demand for, okay, we've got to make more and more money. You're seeing franchises that work, that are bringing in the money. You're seeing less one-hit wonders kind of movies. And so, to say that, cinema can try something new, not this decade. It's not going to do anything. It sees there's no sign of stopping. And I think that a lot of video games, they do kind of take those ideas and run with it. So at least for the big companies, you're going to see less new games based on innovation and more games based on, okay, this sold. So I think
all I'm saying is that imagination doesn't take a big studio down.
No, that's true. But imagination,
which is kind of what you said, Ben.
But at the same time,
it shouldn't. And in gaming, especially, sometimes you occasionally have those great ideas, and then 10 years of people copying them. But when it comes to these businesses, occasionally they take risks, but it's 99% just copying each other to be safe, so that they know we're going to invest this much money. We know these mechanics have been successful. This should make this much money for us. It's just like Hollywood. They do the same type of math-based film development and game development.
Yes, but some of the big successful studios have been able to fall back on recipes, and yet within those recipes always drive the audience to something great, like Disney. The Disney movies, they've done that successfully for many years, not so recently. But Disney movies back with Walt Disney, they had the perfect recipe that they would copy paste on their every movie, and yet every movie is somewhat special.
The Disney films, just to throw in, the Disney films were essentially just taking folklore from all around the world and then just putting their fancy little shiny spin on it. Disney is woefully overrated because the reason Disney did so well is legitimately just because they had the best of the best of the best in the way of animation. They pioneered the animation techniques that we take for granted today. They made movies back in the 50s that look better than movies you see released last year with CGI and everything. Way better than Far Cry. The original Jungle Book was better than Far Cry Primal, in my opinion. But that being said, it's one of those things where it's almost all down to, no offense, Heather, because I work in this industry too, marketing. That's all it really comes down to. It's the same reason you can get a cup of 7-Eleven coffee, pour it into a Starbucks cup, and then people will say it's the best they've ever tasted. This is the problem with major game developing now, is because, again, going back to what I said, gamers want brand new, but they don't want to pay for it. They don't want anything, they want original stuff, but they don't want to throw their money at it. They want the next Call of Duty or the next Far Cry or the next Ass Creed or what have you, because they enjoy it. Even though they bitch about it, they still enjoy it. So why in the world should Ubi do anything new? Caitlin?
But why is it, Steven, that we trust the game, the franchise, but not the developer who made those? Why is it that marketing has to hammer home something that people trust? Why aren't the developers the stars?
Because when it comes right down to it, it's the same reason why we support sports teams, but not necessarily individual players. You take 10 people that enjoy watching NFL. They'll tell you the teams that they like, and then some of those people will go even further and say that they like individual players. At the same time, those players just make up the team brand. Even though you can buy their own jersey, I don't see any anybody walking around with a John Romero shirt. I see people wearing Assassin's Creed shirts.
Kobe Bryant would disagree.
Kobe Bryant is Kobe Bryant. There's that. But we don't have a focus on the creators anymore. We have a focus on the brand nowadays.
Do you think it's because you get a bomb like that every once in a while, like a bomb like Far Cry Primal, where we expected so much and got so little?
I think that if we had situations where games... I think if we had situations where games would come out and then developers would commit seppuku if it failed, I think that would probably push people to make better games. Just my opinion. I mean, at least when Nintendo releases a bad game, because I got to mention Nintendo at least once a call. When Nintendo releases a bad game or a bad quarter, you've got their CEOs coming out and publicly apologizing and then taking a pay cut. We don't have that with John Riccatello from EA. We don't have that with Ubisoft, with whatever the French guy's name is. I forget, Fred. But we don't have anybody taking accountability for these things. They just release it and go, meh, you'll buy the next one. Same deal with Warner Brothers. They released Arkham Knight. They let it fester for a good 6-7 months on PC. They looked at the sales. They looked at the sales figures and went, well, the install base for console is several million. The install base for the PC is only a few 100,000. Hell with them. And yet we keep doing it. We keep buying the damn games. Same deal with Mortal Kombat 10, X, whatever they call it. Consoles got all the DLC, PC got shafted. Why? Because we aren't a huge install base, so they can afford to screw the PC, whereas console, they won't screw them, because they'll buy it anyway. Unless that's way too cynical, that just seems to be how 2015 went, and I have this bad feeling that 2016 is going to go the same way.
Stop buying their bad games, and they'll stop making them.
Stop buying the season passes, is my opinion.
Oh, God, yeah. What a ripoff.
I mean, does anybody actually like a season pass? I like paying money for stuff I don't even know I'm ever going to get.
Witcher 3 season pass was worth it.
Okay, that counts. Caitlin?
I don't know.
Borderlands. The Borderlands season pass is the only one I could ever have justified buying.
Fred, why do you disagree with me on this one?
I would disagree with Ben about the season pass being worth it.
It was $25 for the season pass.
I'm not a fan of season passes.
You already got Hearts of Stone, right? They released a ton of DLC for free, but Hearts of Stone already was like one of the best DLC story, like 12 hours of
Blood Wine.
And Blood and Wine, $25. I would pay $25 just for Hearthstone.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. I had a great time too.
Because I mean, the DLC is $10 each.
Just
so yeah,
$25, you got that, and you're gonna get Blood and Wine. That's right.
And the 16 free DLCs
right,
as well.
From what I've heard, Blood and Wine, like Hearts of Stone was like 12 hours long, and it was great. Blood and Wine, from the developer's own words, is longer in playtime to complete than the entirety of Witcher 2 was. Witcher 2 was like 40 hours long. Like, Blood and Wine is practically going to be its own like main narrative quest game, and that's just part of the season pass.
Well, to throw it back to the chat for a second, Lightmassa says DLC is not just disc lock content. Tell that to Capcom sometime. They think otherwise, bud. But that being said, am I just being too cynical on the whole idea of the season? Because I'm sure
you're not being cynical enough.
I want to hear this, Fred. I want to hear this because you've disagreed with me the whole time. Do you honestly think that this game is worthy of the season pass? Do you think this game is worthy of all the nickel and diming that's probably going to happen? I would imagine while they were making Primal, they were thinking of skins, they were thinking of new animal skins, new weapon skins.
Wait, are you telling me that Far Cry Primal has a season pass?
I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised, but yes, it does. Of course it does. Every game's got to have a season pass now, you know.
If I was Ubisoft, I would throw Far Cry Primal into a locker and just forget it ever happened. I wouldn't release season passes. It's probably the most and it's the most disappointing. It's not the most shameful. It's the most disappointing of all the Far Cry titles we got.
Yeah, I think that this whole idea that we've gotten into, I think we lost Heather, but we've gone into this part where we're no longer getting people who are thinking, I have this great game idea, this needs to be made, I got this great story, let's make this. Like, remember when BioShock came out and we all were just like, oh my god, this is amazing. Now, you don't get games and you don't get sequels, you get franchises. And it's the same thing we were getting with Hollywood, and you get it in games now. You are making franchises, something that you can market the hell out of and then make every year. Just print money.
But Far Cry never was a real disappointment. Far Cry 4 wasn't great. Far Cry 3 had still a good villain, still a decent story. This is a real disappointment.
Well, alright, let's put it this way. The other games had a lot of the same things that we are complaining about in terms of like copying themselves, not really innovating, but they put more effort into it. You know, they bothered to get great voice acting, get real writers and make a story. You know, Far Cry 3 was pretty, I mean, I love Far Cry 3, but if you really examine it, it was pretty derivative of the previous Far Cry games and every other AAA game that's out there. Just like this game. They're all derivative.
Blood Dragon 2?
It's just yes, Blood Dragon 2, please.
Yeah.
But man, it's not. Even when they're good, and I like Far Cry 3. Even when they're good, they're all derivative, and that's the problem. They're not innovating; they're copying because they know it's successful. Occasionally, once in like 100, you get real creativity in the AAA industry. So, because like I said, it's the money. You can't risk $60 million on a cool new idea nowadays. Gaming is like those AAA games are pretty pricey to make, you know?
Yeah, but why? See, that's the thing. A good quarter of the budget, at least, tends to go toward advertising. I honestly think that the majority of these games, if they took even a pittance of their advertising budget and put it into the game itself, we wouldn't have situations like Far Cry Primal. Primal was marketed to death. And in fact, a lot of AAA games get marketed to death. And then when we get them, they're not all that great. The last AAA game that I can sincerely say I was very, very happy with was Alien Isolation. That was marketed everywhere.
Super cool.
And it was not only the best Alien game. Yeah, oh yeah. Alien Isolation? Yes.
I'd probably call it borderline between AAA and like indie. I don't know.
Really?
Those lines are always so blurry. It's hard to tell.
All I can say is that it made me forget. It made me forget about colonial marines. That's impressive. The very fact that a game was able to make me forget about that digital abortion that Gearbox made, I gotta give it kudos.
Wasn't Alien Isolation published by Sega?
It was, because they had to make up for that too.
But I mean, so that's not indie right there.
With how Sega's gone lately, yeah, it kind of is.
And even though we're praising Alien Isolation for being innovative, it's not original. It's based on Alien. I mean, they made that game and they were like, "Hey, we need investors." All right, this game.
That's kind of what I was saying, Vogue.
It connects to the everybody who liked Alien. Like, hey, we're going to create an Alien aesthetic, and people will love it.
When I was talking about Disney, that's kind of what I was saying. Is like you're taking a recipe and still you're producing magic out of it.
Yeah, but at the same time, Disney's also stealing anime and producing magic out of it. So there's that too.
Ask people who are really big, not even enthusiasts, but people who really study the history of animation. I kind of have studied the history of TV, not a ton of animation, but I think most of them would say that Disney has not been on the forefront of innovation.
No, I'm sorry. I should have rephrased. I'm not talking about Disney. I'm talking about Walt Disney.
Yeah, like
I'm talking about Disney old school, like
old school. But again, we're not talking about the history of gaming or the history of film. We're talking about right now and the way it affects the future, right?
Yeah, but it's still. I'm taking Disney as an example, basically arguing that that's still happening in every true art form.
But here's the thing: you have to separate the man from the company. The company in its current state, I really don't think Walt Disney.
Yeah, forget Disney today. Disney today is crap. Nobody denies that.
There we go.
I'm saying, essentially, conceptually, I'm saying you can always take a recipe and produce a recipe, but still produce magic out of it. And I think that's what Alien Isolation is.
Yeah, you can.
Plus, don't forget, we also had Disney have a little cameo in Fallout New Vegas as Mr. House, so that was always fun.
Easiest example, I was talking. I know I bring it up all the time. I'll try not to, but Witcher 3. I love Witcher 3, and I'll tell you right now, that game didn't innovate. There was nothing. What was innovative in that game? They took all that was innovative was
so true.
They just did everything great. They just made everything good. Every aspect was high quality. All the voice acting, the music, the mechanics, very in depth and detailed. That's what we want. I mean, that's good. That's good enough for AAA. That's the best I think you can expect out of AAA. You can expect them to not take super high risks in those things, but you can expect them to invest their money in quality stuff. I want good music. I want good writing. I want good story. Like, this is something that's frustrating with Far Cry Primal. The fact that they, you've probably heard that they like made this cool language, right? They just made it up. They probably paid some guy with a doctorate like 50, 60K to like make up this language for them.
Of course, there's no heart to it.
Why can't they do that and just say, hey, let's take 200 grand, 300 grand, minuscule part of their budget, and hire a team of really talented writers and make a great story. But instead, we get Far Cry Primal with no story. Just here's a couple points on the map. Let's walk over there. Print money.
Especially since all they would have had to do is go on Tumblr, and they would have been able to find somebody to make a new language for them, I'm sure.
Right. I mean, they went through the effort of hiring someone to do that. Why didn't they go through the effort of hiring someone to write a damn story?
I don't know. Why do some companies write off toilet seats for $10K? I mean, you never know. Eli.
I thought it was great that in this language that they made up for the game, that there are a bunch of words that are almost the same as in English. Like tiger is tigre. Like, really? 10,000 BC, they're going to sound almost the same as English with some of this stuff.
All right. I mean, it's the same word, okay, but people were off. Like, there was some complaints from people about like, why do they sound? People didn't talk this way. Complex languages like way predate this, but I'm fine. Go ahead.
I'm fine with them giving a complex language to the people. It's just that the way that a lot of the words are, like when it comes to something like tiger. that's based on much more modern words. There's no reason why it would have sounded that way back then. Like, all the other words sound totally different, but certain ones, it's like...
So the fact that the main and named characters look like runway models with, lion skins on, that's not a big deal?
Well, to be
I'm
fair,
pretty sure these people didn't have plastic surgeons back then.
To be fair, okay, they tried to make them look attractive. Sure, you can complain about that, but the characters, like anything about them being skinny or anything like that, at that time they had to do so much exercise that they couldn't get fat. So, at least as far as that, but
whoa! Do not take away my attractive video game people. Do not. I loved that the people I met were attractive, and I love that the main character, he was like not the stereotypical kind of main character that you would get either. I did like him. And then, I was actually almost disappointed in the beginning when you're crawling up and the other guy's next to you, because I thought I might be the other guy. I wasn't sure it was going to be the first person. I was like, no, I want to be the cool guy that they flashed on first.
I'm surprised nobody's having a fit that you are forced to play a male character, come to think of it.
Did it bother anybody else that, they went through all this effort of making this cool language, and then the subtitles are, your standard caveman, me hungry, me kill animal speak? Like, really? You're translating a language and you're translating it our, comical, caricature of a caveman. Like, really? He's not saying me hungry. He's saying yeah, I'm hungry. Let's go get some food. He's just saying it in his own language. He's not saying me kill tiger.
I would just like to have more Swedish Chef subtitles. I mean, that was my favorite part of Guild Wars 2, personally. I think we need to have more of that. Paris.
Well, on the topic of that, actually, I forgot what I was gonna say. What were we just talking about?
That is actually standard.
Yeah.
The attractive characters.
No, that's what it was. Attractive. You know what? I don't mind the attractive characters. They're huntsmen. They work out. That's fine. I think the language thing is really one of those misplaced resources where, the payoff of having a coherent tribal language is that after you listen to enough cutscenes and listen to enough people talk, you can sort of oh, hey, I recognize that word. Hey, they're actually using the language in that way. But beyond that, there's no other payoff for that. It's oh, hey, it's a language.
If I may, to counter that, I disagree. I think the payoff is what I expect out of good games, and that's to make me feel immersed. 18. The fact that they speak a believable language actually contributes to my immersion. It's just that nothing else does. So... immersion's really key.
No, that's what I'm saying. Just the language on its own, it's not enough to prop the game up. It's you can have the most beautiful language in this setting, and it's not gonna get me into Far Cry Primal.
That's that inconsistency of they put effort into something and then not at other things.
Yeah,
that's fair. So Heather, you had your hand up. I'm sure you want to weigh in on this topic, and then we're going to get into insulting our entire fan base by giving away Evolve.
No, I mean, I guess they pointed it out too, is that, a language being developed for a game or being developed for a movie or a book or anything like that is impressive. I do like that. But there does have to be some substance behind the game itself. Skyrim had, I love bringing in Skyrim, but Skyrim had, its dragon language actually was developed for the game. It is actually a pretty substantial language. And it was, super interesting, but the game itself was also super interesting and it had a lot behind it. So if there's nothing else to back it up, it doesn't necessarily make it an additional interesting tidbit to the game. It's just, oh, well, there's where the money went, and nothing else. So, I guess they said it.
So if nothing else, I guess we can all kind of agree that Primal, while meaning well, kind of comes off as a shallow representation of previous games, and actually just an amalgam of every game out there that's an adventure role-playing type of game. It just has weird choices made for mechanics.
I'm not even sure I agree with the meaning well part.
Really?
I don't know. I mean, this is my super cynical nature here, but yeah, this screams businessman. Let's low effort, make some money, you know?
Well, that's also certain teams in Ubisoft do kind of stick with that. I mean, I actually talked to Fred before this earlier in the week, and I said something to the effect of all the goodwill that Ubisoft has gathered with me from Far Cry 4 being enjoyable and Blood Dragon. I need a sequel. And Assassin's Creed Syndicate and how fun it was to just rappel through the streets and rooftops of London. Far Cry Primal pretty much sucked all of that out like a huge gaping vacuum. I have overwhelming... I have no hate for this game, but I have no love for it, and I'm just exceedingly meh about Primal in general. And speaking of exceedingly meh, Fred, we have a giveaway, don't we? We should probably do that.
Yeah, but to also give my closing thoughts before we go to sleep tonight, and I hope we do after my closing thoughts. When we started AAA Anonymous this year, I knew we'd cover those 3 titles, which were Rise of the Tomb Raider, XCOM 2, and Far Cry Primal. And ironically enough, I was most excited about Far Cry Primal. Like, you would have asked me between the 3 titles, which one are you most hopeful about? And if you listen to just one of the shows we did a couple weeks ago, I expressed that excitement without hesitation. Is this going to be the reboot of Far Cry that we've been waiting for? And it's nothing but the opposite. If anything, the one that I had the least expectations toward was Tomb Raider, and it's the one I loved the best this year. XCOM 2 did a fantastic job at stimulating my intellect and getting me addicted to a strategy game. I think you can qualify as a strategy game. And Far Cry Primal, I disagree with you, Steven. It's not a meh. It's a disaster. It's outrageous on so many levels. Yeah. It is outrageous on so many levels, not just for the sheer mediocrity that was released by Ubisoft, but also by being embraced by the press as overall a good game. I think this is really
You've obviously not played Unity then, because that is the disaster, Fred. Assassin's Creed Unity was a game that shouldn't have been released. At least Far Cry works.
This is, I think this is shameful. For a studio, this is shameful to release, and for the press to kind of say good game is shameful. And even meh is no. It's you're. Yeah. It's no,
I don't know if I can say that, because there are developers and publishers that have done far worse. My personal hatred goes toward
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers as a publisher, and I hate to say it, Rocksteady. Less than 5 years ago, Rocksteady was a fantastic publisher. They were trusted. They were wonderful. They made they made Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, and I kind of like that stuff.
And I gotta get back to Evolve. I gotta get to my giveaway, and
one last thing. I don't think that this is as bad as you might say. At least Primal was playable. At least Primal's playable, though. Arkham Knight was unplayable and released as basically a beta.
Yeah, but Batman Arkham Knight was a real game. This is not.
Yeah, they had real writing, real story. Yeah. The people who got the chance to play it loved it. It was a good game that just got a botched. It was an insult
to every comic book collector out there.
No. You can't say that. We can have a whole show about Batman Arkham Knight.
Oh, we will.
But actually, the game that you've been bashing for the past 6 months, Evolve. We're about to give it away. Yeah, because
there's only 2 people that play it.
And I would say Evolve,
wait, we're giving it away.
Evolve is a much
3 people.
Evolve, I applaud for what it was, even though I think the DLC was outrageous, the cost and all that came with it.
$100.
The base game was. The base game was a great concept. It was beautifully executed. I had a lot of fun playing the 5 hours maybe I might have played. That's all I was expecting out of it. It was super well produced, super great ambient, great vibe, great game. Great game if you can afford it, essentially, because you're only going to get a couple hours of fun out of it, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Bottom line is, we're giving the game away, so Caitlin, please think of a magic number between 0 and 100. And everybody can, even the people on the show, can feel free to plug in a number into the chat. Caitlin, do you have the magic number?
Fred's only saying this because he wants somebody else to play against. And the servers are
Yes.
You're such an ass. Caitlin, you have the magic number. Everybody,
Yes.
please plug in a number between 0 and 100. I already have the game, so I obviously don't need to vote. And Caitlin going 3 times. Going twice for Evolve. Going once, Evolve, a much, much better game than Far Cry Primal. Caitlin, the lucky winner.
So you guys didn't know, but we were playing blackjack, and the closest to 21 looks like it was Vibrantos, I think.
I'm sorry, Vibrantos.
No, maybe Black Pete?
Looks like
Black Pete or
well,
Black
you got tell me.
Congratulations,
Paris.
Vibrantos.
Which one?
What was your magic
Black
number,
Pete-
Caitlin?
Black
You can-
Pete is
I told you we're playing blackjack. It's 21.
21 there, Fred.
Harris was closer. He was only 12 away.
All right, I can't count. We know this. I thought we knew
Wow.
this.
Paris, it
Rigged! 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 Corrupt!
What? Steven, yeah, please send me to sleep. And
Honestly, the only way to win is not to play. Never in my life has that line been more accurate than giving away Evolve. So congratulations. Once we get the math figured out, we'll get the key over to you, you poor, poor thing. But that being said, from all of us at OP Noobs to all of you in the chat, enjoy Pokemon. You're not going to enjoy Far Cry Primal. You'll probably enjoy Evolved more. Hopefully, the next Far Cry Kansas, will be far more enjoyable. So, from all of us on the team to all of you, good night. Have fun. Go to sleep.
next Sunday, Ubisoft some more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, next Sunday we do The Division.
Oh,
And
really?
hopefully
great.
we'll... Yeah,
Great. Why not Hitman?
Hopefully,
Yeah, can
no,
we do
that's-
Hitman?
Hitman.
Man.
Hitman is the weekend after, so Ubisoft The Division next Sunday. and
Harris gave
hopefully-
up. Harris left.
we need to have a show where we are bashing the
This
game
company
the
is
whole time.
crap. Thanks, Heather, for joining us. Very much appreciate it. Steven, it's all yours.
All right. So that being said, yes, tune in next Sunday, for more Ubisoft or more Ubisoft, depending on how you look at it. So that being said, good night, everybody. Go to sleep. Go away.
Right, guys.
Go
Do the jazz hands.
away. Hey, Paris, you're back. Now go away again.
Yeah, woo. Yeah. Here I am.